We will call to order the joint meeting of the Glendale City Council and the Glendale Successor Agency of November 27, 2012. May we have a roll call for the City Council?
Council members: Friedman.
Here.
Manukian. Here. Najarian.
Here.
Weaver.
Here.
Mayor Quintero.
Here. May we have a roll call for the Successor Agency?
Board members: Friedman.
Here.
Manukian. Here. Najarian. Here. Weaver.
Here.
Chair Quintero.
Here. May we have your report?
The agenda for the November 27, 2012 joint public meeting of the City Council and the Successor Agency was posted on Thursday, November 21, 2012 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. The item before you today, and the first item actually, is the Director of Community Development regarding Downtown Glendale Community Benefit District. 1A is council motion accepting the Downtown Glendale Association as the interim advisory board for the Downtown Glendale Community Benefit District, and 1B is council motion accepting a 7-year management agreement for the newly formed Downtown Community Benefit District that is administered by the Downtown Glendale Association. And there's a second item following this one.
Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, sir. We have for you a rather brief presentation regarding the next steps for the Community Benefit District, the CBD, that was recently established. We are going through the procedural steps of standing up that organization, and to give you the actual presentation will be Jackie Bartlow. Jackie?
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Today I come before you to request approval and acceptance of the Downtown Glendale Association as the interim board for the newly formed Downtown Glendale Benefits District, and also to accept the 7-year management and disbursement agreement between the city and the association. These approvals are necessary for the association to be able to administer the district as well as receive the budgeted assessment funds from the county. Today we have a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation.
Jackie, the controller for the
Just to give you a little bit of background, real briefly, just a quick summary. From 2010 to 2012, the Downtown Glendale BID Steering Committee worked with the city as well as a consultant to help go through the process of forming the district. Back in March of this year, we came before you to basically get approval, an ordinance approved for the development of the Community Benefit District. Then in May, we came before you also let me back up. In May, petitions were mailed out to property owners where they were required to get 30% support. That was done. Then June, we came before you to actually have those petitions certified, as well as adopt a resolution to be able to send out the official ballots, where, as in July, those ballots were opened by the city clerk, where they received the minimum 51% support. And at that point, City Council adopted a resolution and established the Downtown Community Benefit District. Once that district was formed, the steering committee and officially designated Downtown Glendale Association as the name of their organization, and the steering committee became the interim board. The board is made up of Rick Lemo from the Americana, Paul Chase from General Growth, Joe Stiddick, who's a certified commercial investment member in the downtown area, Helen McDonough from Massage Envy, Dennis DiPietro from DiPietro Properties, who also owns property, Raul Porto from Porto's Bakery, who also owns property, and Mike Navarro from Legacy Partners. Just quickly, since July, the board has made quite a few accomplishments. Those accomplishments include developing articles of incorporation, which describes their goals and objectives, establishing bylaws. They've created several committees. One is the sidewalk operations, and that includes landscape and maintenance, and district identity, which is marketing promotions. They've started the process of becoming a nonprofit organization. They've established a bank account with a local financial institution within the district, and they've inquired about insurance insurance for the officers, as well as the association. So at this point, we're looking at their next steps. One is the approval of the association as the interim advisory board. Sorry. Two is to accept the management agreement. After that, the assessments that the county collected with the taxes will be transferred to the association. That should be somewhere around December and January. At that point, they can then recruit a district manager or at least a management company to help with the organization. And then they would advertise for a maintenance landscape firm as well as a PR firm. The next couple of slides are really just a brief outline, which is also included in your staff report, of the key responsibilities of the Downtown Association as well as the city. First is the programs and implementation, and this is the responsibility of the Downtown Association. This means that they would be responsible for carrying out all the duties of the district plan, which you approved back in July. They must comply. They must competitively bid all contracts over $15,000, and that's similar to what we do here in the city. They must keep assessment funds and any other funds in separate accounts. If there are funds that they generate from other events unrelated to the assessment. They must also use the district name and association's name on all promotional and marketing materials. They must provide by mail a statement of activities and programs annually to property owners, and it must be done by December 31st, with a copy coming to the city by December 15th. All meetings must comply with the Brown Act and be open to the public, which they've been doing. The program and budget reports must be submitted to the city on a quarterly basis, with the first report being due on April 30th. And all of these activities must be implemented within the approved budget. Their annual financial statements must be prepared with the annual report and budget that shows how their assessments were spent in the previous calendar year. The association must also annually prepare assessment data and submit it to the city by June 1st. This information will remain the same except for when there's new development. This year, this type of preparation was done by the city and the consultant, and staff will continue to assist the association with that. And finally, they must maintain ongoing communication with the district property owners regarding meetings, events, assessment notifications, and other administrative processes that they're responsible for. The city's responsibilities include administration, which is administering the management agreement, coordinating collection of annual assessments, providing the county with timely tax roll information, and providing general city information to the association. This responsibility has been carried out so far by the city's liaison. The city may also assist in resolving any discrepancies in assessments, assessment amounts and calculations by conducting reviews and audits. The city will also disperse assessment funds to the associates on or about December 20th and April 30th. There may be other disbursements throughout the year depending on when late payments arrive. The city is also responsible for reporting and handling any adjustments made to the assessments with the county. The city also has the right and the responsibility to request financial summary for review if not satisfied with the information that they're getting from the association as it relates to their commitment to the association, to the district, as well as expenditures. And this can be done at any time. So this is pretty much a kind of a snapshot of the agreement, and it completes my presentation.
Are there any questions? I do have a question. In terms of the elections that will be held next year, who's eligible to run, either a business owner or a property owner?
Just a property owner.
Oh, just property owners, not business owners.
It's a property-based business improvement district.
Right. So it's different from the Montrose bid.
Yeah. that's a business-based district.
Right.
And we handle all of their assessments. We bill for that. Whereas the downtown association, theirs is done on the tax roll. We submit data to the county, and then they're billed.
And in terms of the elections, the weighing of the votes and so forth, it would just be the plurality of whoever runs, or?
That's correct.
Right.
They'll submit nominations, and then they'll send out the ballots to all of the property owners.
But someone with a larger parcel will.
It's equal.
And how many property owners are going to participate?
Right now, I think we have 7.
No, I meant in terms of property, parcels, more or less. How many votes are there going to be?
I believe, if I remember correctly, I believe there's a little bit over 100.
Over 100 separate property owners.
135.
135 property owners.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Other questions? All right, I have one speaker, Dennis DiPietro.
Evening, members of City Council and the Successor Agency. I've been a member of the steering committee for the CBD and currently acting as, acting chair of the Sidewalk Maintenance Committee. So I'd ask that you all accept the Downtown Glendale Association as the interim advisory board for the CBD, and also approve the 7-year management agreement with the CBD so we can move on ahead and get this thing rolling. Thank you.
Okay, well, for myself, I certainly hope the money is spent in marketing and advertising. I hope the property owners understand how important that is for the small business there on Brand Boulevard. So,
I agree with that statement. I also, in the report, I saw that there was a statement regarding we will not be charging for the services that the city will be providing, unlike other business improvement districts. Is that correct? We're charging others, we're not charging them?
No, I think what we are doing, we establish a baseline of service that we provide to everybody in the
Okay.
community, and then anything above that is what is picked up by the CBD.
Okay.
And we do that in other places as well. This being the CBD is as much akin to a property-based business improvement district where you can do more than just marketing and promotions. So while marketing and promotions is a big part of it, they'll also do steam cleaning, they'll do some litter removal, things like that.
I just want to make sure that everyone's being treated equally, all
Yes,
the
sir.
business improvement districts, in terms of city services that are being provided for those services.
Yes,
Whatever
sir.
we're providing is the same across the board to everyone, and then any of that, of course, is different.
That's correct. We provide that same baseline service.
I was reading through the contract. Is the city attorney happy with the levels and breadth of the insurance coverage that is proposed?
Yes, members of the City Council Successor Agency, generally, this is still a draft, and we have a general comfort level with the levels of insurance required. If you, or if any of the City Council members feel that we should modify that in some way, we can certainly take comments on that now and take that under consideration.
I saw that there's a $2 million general liability, so
We
That would cover-
measure that in terms of the type of services that are being proposed through the Community Benefit District, and that seemed to be an appropriate level, as opposed to in some other instances where the risk level for the services being provided may be higher.
Simply because they're not doing capital investments, the way that the city would, but more of the maintenance and cleaning and marketing and promotions.
And that if we did have liability, the $2 million policy covers us up to our self-insured retention, so we'd have excess coverage as well, already covering us in the event of any liability to the city. So that's really what it gets us the protection for.
and does it cover things like management liability, harassment, discrimination?
Those are
Wrongful
generally
terminations.
not general liability insurance required. Those come under E&O or employment practices types of activity.
So do we have that?
We can look at that. We can look at whether we can secure policies for those types of use.
And that may be the type of policy that we'd be interested in securing when the manager, professional manager, is selected. So we still have an opportunity to impose additional insurance requirements.
All right, thank you.
Okay, well, and I mentioned advertising and marketing because there seemed to be some concern about public safety and hiring security guards, et cetera, and quite frankly, I don't see that in the downtown at all. So I just hope, it's up to the board, obviously, to do what they feel is important, but I just think that for advertising, marketing, and a certain amount of maintenance, I suppose, sidewalks and so forth, it's probably also a good idea. Okay, do I have a motion and a second?
Move 1A and B for the council.
Second.
Roll call.
Council members Friedman,
Yes.
Menuchyan,
Yes.
Jarian,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Mayor Quintero.
Yes. Need one for the successor agency? No. Okay. All right, next, please.
Next item is Director of Community Development regarding amendments to Title 30 of the Glendale Municipal Code relating to sign standards in mixed-use zones and to creative signs, 2A is an ordinance for introduction.
Is that Clark Gable there?
Frankly, Scarlett.
Is this Manitoba or something?
Looking good.
As a member of the Glendale Kiwanis, I'm assuming the jokes are aimed at my mustache. Yes, 5 more days and it will be gone. It is to raise awareness about men's cancers, such as prostate cancer and other types,
For a good cause.
for the Glendale Kiwanis.
Got the
That's
plug
raising
in.
money.
You actually,
You
glad I
can
raised it
make
so
a
you can-
contribution and I'll gladly shave it up.
actually look like a Catalan bureaucrat there in Barcelona. You fit right into...
Want to vote for independence, please?
That's right. Mr. Ochoa.
Yes, sir. We are very pleased to bring you this report. Part of our management mantra is to operate, evaluate, and modulate. The council had noticed quite a ways back that our sign program needed to be modified. It wasn't at the optimum effectiveness, and that most of the more significant buildings that were being brought to you for sign program requests were having to be dealt with as variances. Considering the unique nature of what is going on in the downtown and the very significant investment, levels of private investment that is taking place in the downtown, we wanted to reflect what your focus on creativity and innovation was, and so we are bringing to you a modification, proposed modification of our sign program. And with that, Eric Kraus will give you the staff presentation. Eric?
Good afternoon, members of the council and successor agency, city manager, staff. Staff's here today to propose an introduction to amendments to the zoning code relating to sign standards in mixed-use zones, and also to the creative signs. We have a brief PowerPoint presentation to show you guys to give you an idea of what we're proposing. We're proposing a new, what's called identification signs. These would be allowed for only projects located in the DSP, SFMU, and IMUR zones. They would be permitted a maximum of 4 such signs, and each sign would have to face a facade that was either facing a street, alley, or a driveway similar to the current standards.
So it's 4 signs, not all in the same elevation,
Correct.
right?
There'd be 1 sign permitted for each facade, and if they only had 3 facades facing any of those required uses, they'd only get 3 signs, but a maximum of 4 signs for any one building. So the maximum square footage would be 100 square feet, and this can be combined with a new kind of projecting ID signs, which we're also proposing. I have a couple of examples of some of the recent projects that have gotten similar kind of identification signs. This is the Lexon Orange project that was approved back in October of 2011. They had 3 wall signs. Essentially, we're calling them as identification signs because they're not really wall signs. They're just larger standard identification sign could allow. This one was about 1/5 of what we're proposing under the revised code. We have another one that was located over here, and that was about, let's see here, as I come to you, about 2/5 of what the sign would allow. And also the third one that was allowed on the Lexon Orange project, and these were all done by variance for the project. Under the current code, these would all be allowed by right, would not require a variance. So they had another third sign that was about, excuse me, 2/3 of what the code is proposed to allow. The other sign I spoke of, this is also similar to identification signs. These would be projecting identification signs, also only allowed in the mixed-use zones of DSP, SFMU, and IMUR zones. And they would only be permitted for buildings that had a minimum height of 30 feet. And they'd also be allowed a maximum of 4 signs, again, only 1 sign per facade. And they couldn't combine one identification wall sign and 1 projecting sign. It either has to be an identification wall sign or a projecting sign. It couldn't be both. And we're proposing that to be a maximum of 1/2 square foot per building frontage. And then the projection cannot project more than 1/10 of the overall building height. There's a couple examples of some signs recently approved. This one was done through the creative sign ordinance. This is for the Lex on Orange project again. And this is about half of what would be allowed per code. Now, the building on this face is about 200 feet of frontage, so they'd be allowed a 100 square foot sign based on the proposed code. And this is the Camden Triangle project, and this one was proposed at an area of 200 square feet, and they would be allowed 260 square feet based on the proposed code. And there's a couple of other small modifications that we're proposing. One would be to allow residential uses that have just a permanent leasing office, which what we're seeing with a lot of these larger residential buildings downtown, to have a permanent leasing sign as well as a permanent window sign. Currently, they're not allowed by code because they're not considered a commercial use. So this is just an example of a leasing sign that was approved for the Lex on Orange, again done through a variance. And also you can see there's the window sign on that project as well. And then there was another leasing office sign that was for the recently approved Brand on Wilson project. So there'd be the 2 signs that would be specifically for just the leasing office, and it has to be on the ground floor. That'd be the window sign for leasing office and also just a regular wall sign. One other modification we're proposing is to projecting signs. Those are currently allowed at a square footage of 6 square feet. And we're proposing to bump that up to 12 square feet in the DSP, SFMU, and IMUR zones. And Alan Loomis is here, and he's going to go over some of the modifications to the design review criteria for creative signs. Thank you.
Thank you. The creative sign ordinance, unlike the other ones...
Mr. Weaver had a
question.
Sorry.
These are the maximums
Yes.
that you permit, but is all this subject to planning, ever saying that sign size fits or should be smaller?
What you just saw would be permitted by right. So there would be, provided that they met the appropriate engineering standards, they
Even
would
if
come
we
in with a
don't
sign
like
permit.
it, you don't like it, council doesn't like it, there will be nothing we can do about it.
Generally speaking, yes, although we anticipate with these large projects, as we've seen in the past, a sign that's 200 square feet is more often than not incorporated into the basic design of the building, so you'd be seeing that as part of the design. The creative sign criteria, however, which is restricted to the downtown specific plan and the CR zone, which is Montrose Shopping Park, that remains a discretionary action that, through design review, staff, and ultimately the council could deny. With this, we've approved, since the creative sign ordinance process was adopted in 2011, there's been 6 signs that have been approved with this process. And what we've found using that is that the findings that we have to make are not exactly attuned to how we do design review in Glendale and kind of the issues we encounter in the downtown. So we're proposing to modify those, particularly the contextual criteria, so we make specific reference to the downtown specific plan. There's some other criteria related to the quality of the sign itself and its placement on the building that will basically leave as it is. These are 4 of the examples we've seen that have been approved. What we've seen, except for the 5-star cinema, which is the bottom kind of middle there, by and large, these are basically just very large letters. In the case of the Galleria, that's also going to be a highly polished stainless steel, so pedestrians, as they walk by, will actually get to interact, see their reflections in that sign. There's a fountain in front of it, so there's a lot of other elements going on to that sign than just it being very large letters. But we don't want to sort of encourage that that's what creative signs mean, as just large letters. What we really would hope to see is much more sculptural signs or kind of signs of a sort of historic vintage. So The upper right hand, which is the Starbucks, you can see that's literally shaped like a cup and the steam is coming out of it. That's the kind of sign we'd hope to see in the creative sign ordinance. The Target sign is actually the Target logo on a stick that actually rotates. That's in West Hollywood, which is where we sort of adopted or kind of lifted the creative sign ordinance as we originally used it. But the specific references we'd like to make to the downtown specific plan are these 3 diagrams. They're referenced by figures. These focus on the entertainment district on Maryland Avenue, the open space, namely the paseos, such as we see at the marketplace or the exchange or some of the office plazas, and some really key locations like where the Galleria sign was located. That is the view corridor that terminates as you're standing at the Americana looking across Central. That's where you'll see that big Galleria sign. Makes sense to do a large format sign in that location. And that's really been the foundation of how we've done the findings thus far for these signs. So we want to sort of adopt that criteria. So this is the composite of the specific locations where we think creative signs would make sense. And those 4 signs I just showed you are all located on spots that this amendment would, to the creative sign findings would implement.
Just so I'm clear, so the proposal is to expand the use of creative signs to this entire, sort of to the entire DSP?
Right now, the creative sign ordinance applies to the entire DSP, but it basically, the findings tend to be things like as they exist today, or the sign has to exhibit, a high degree of inventiveness and spirit. It's a little hard to write findings that are sort of objective and defensible on those findings, whereas referencing these 3 diagrams, we can say, yes, the plan calls for an element at this view corridor or on this particular street to implement the art and entertainment district. So this gives us a little more kind of objective foundation for saying where we should have creative signs. The historic styled signs, such as La Fonda, which is the upper left, those would still be permitted anywhere throughout the downtown specific plan or in Montrose. But this kind of specific locational criteria is really geared towards the kind of sign we see at like the Galleria that they proposed. So we're not seeing large lettered signs popping up everywhere in the downtown, but just in very specific locations.
What about the Starbucks coffee cup?
That would be able to anywhere in the downtown.
How about digital signs? What provisions are we making for the creativity associated with digital signs?
Those would be permitted provided they meet the other design findings. So, for example, the 5-star cinema sign, which is the bottom right, that's actually an LED strip, so the movie imagery would actually be able to move. The finding for that was reflective of the business that sign was representing, in this case, a movie theater. So a digital sign would be applicable if it met some sort of design criterion reflecting the business that the sign was advertising.
Well, you'll know if it's a good-looking sign when you see it. It's the kind of thing, oh, that's good.
It's somewhat similar in some ways it's similar to any other kind of design review. It is somewhat, you know it when you see it, but we are trying to provide some sort of rational criteria to sort of help focus that discussion. And as I said, we're not proposing that this would be expanded to the other mixed-use zones. This is limited to the downtown and Montrose Shopping Park. Obviously, this diagram is a reference to the shopping park. And it would remain a discretionary design review action for the creative signs.
So if we don't like what you approve, you're fired.
So with that concludes our presentation. Eric and I'd be happy to answer any questions, but the action we're asking is that the council introduce the proposed ordinance. And the Planning Commission also reviewed this and recommends introduction as well.
Questions and comments, Mr. Najarian?
Couple questions. Let me first go back to the identification signs. What are those limited to? Because a lot of those are mixed use. Let's say there's a bar on the ground floor. Could they have the bar advertised on the sign?
An ID sign is limited to the name of the building.
Building, okay.
And what we've found, and it's specifically geared towards this because what we found with these large mixed residential projects where there's 300, 200 units, the building is branded with a particular name, and the developer has a desire to sort of put that name on a lot of as many sides as possible. So this would be for the building name, not for building businesses within the building.
Okay. Then let's go to your next, the next portion, the creative sign. Okay. I don't want a creative sign to take the place of the public art. So I want that in code, so someone doesn't say, look at this great sign I did, that takes care of my responsibility
Right.
for that. And I know that sometimes it's a fine line in doing that, but it would be my preference, I don't know how the successor agency feels or council, but I mean, if you're doing a great sign, you're doing it because it's a great sign. You're not doing it because you don't want to pay us the money for the public art requirement.
And when the council adopted the design guidelines or the public art guidelines in conjunction with the public art ordinance, those guidelines say public art cannot be a sign. So that's already in the policies adopted by the council. We've had that question come up, too.
In Pasadena, and I think you've used this example before, you've shown it on Lake and Colorado, not Lake and Colorado. It's Lake in Colorado or Lake in California. They have a decorative awning along the building frontage, and the owner used that as the public art. Do we permit decorative awnings? Whose decision is that? Let's say they come to us and say, it's not the sign, but it's a decorative awning that goes around the building, and it's sculpted metal with colors that refract the light in such a beautiful way, et cetera. It's the vitamin shop on Lake. It's Lake, and
exactly.
I think Colorado,
maybe specifically which one.
Is that our call, or
Yes.
is that your call? Or
It's the council's call. If, with advice from the Arts Commission, if a developer was choosing to do on-site art as part of the public art ordinance, that proposal needs to be reviewed by the Arts Commission as an advisory role to the council. The council ultimately approves that as the public art plan. And as I mentioned, the guidelines for public arts say public art is not cannot be signs.
Other than that, I'm fine. I support it.
You can get closer to take a picture if you'd like. It's okay. No one will mind.
Well, hello, Stephen.
Hi. Congratulations. Hi. Question, did the Planning Commission unanimously vote for this? Was there any dissent?
It was 3-0. There was 2 members absent that evening.
Okay, well, I support it. I think, number one, we have the 2 guardians of good taste that are going to be able to manage this this issue. And when those guardians leave, I think the way the code is set and so forth, I think we'll have no problems. But just overall, I just think a downtown needs to have lots of lights and advertising. I think that's what attracts people and kind of makes it stand out. So I think we're headed down the right.
Gives it a little atmosphere.
Yeah, it gives an atmosphere. And so do I have a...
Yeah, I'll introduce the ordinance at 2A.
Right, the ordinance has been introduced by Mr. Weaver. What's next?
There are no further items on this particular agenda.
Move to adjourn for the city council.
Second.
We're adjourned for the city council.
Or adjourn for successor agency.
We are adjourned for the successor agency.